Hello and welcome back to Now Read This, the story of King Arthur and his knights. Part 1, Chapter 2, How Arthur twice performed the miracle of the sword before Sir Ector, and how his birthright was discovered unto him. So Arthur made haste to that part of the lists where Sir Ector sat with the people of his household, and he stood before his father and said, Sire, my brother Kay hath sent me hitherward for to bid thee come straightway unto the pavilion where we have taken up our inn. And truly, I think something very extraordinary hath befallen, for my brother Kay hath such a countenance as I never saw him wear. Then Sir Ector marvelled very greatly what it was that should cause Sir Kay to quit that battle and to summon him at such a time, wherefore he arose from where he sat and went with Arthur. And they went to the pavilion, and when he had come there, behold, Sir Kay was standing in the midst of the pavilion, and Sir Ector saw that his face was as white as the ashes of wood, and that his eyes shone with a wonderful brightness. And Sir Ector said, My son, what ails thee? Whereunto Sir Kay made reply, Sire, here is a very wonderful matter. Therewith he took his father by the hand, and brought him to the table that stood in the pavilion. And upon the table there lay a cloak, and there was something within the cloak. Then Sir Kay opened the cloak, and lo, there lay the sword of the anvil, and the hilt thereof, and the blade thereof glistered with exceeding splendour. And Sir Ector immediately knew that sword, and whence it came. Wherefore he was filled with such astonishment that he wist not what to do. And for a while his tongue refused to speak, and after a while he found speech and cried out aloud in a great voice, What is this that mine eyes behold? To this Sir Kay made reply, Sire, I have that sword which stood a while since embedded in the anvil that stands upon the cube of marble stone before the great cathedral. Wherefore I demand that thou tellest me what this may portend. Then Sir Ector said, How came you by that sword? And for a while Sir Kay was silent, but after a while he said, Sire, I brake my sword in that battle which of late I fought, whereupon I found me this sword in its stead. Then Sir Ector was altogether bemazed, and knew not whether to believe what his ears heard. Sir Kay sounds like a little bit of a rat to me. And after a while he said, If so be that thou didst draw forth this sword from the anvil, then it must also be that thou art rightwise King of Britain, for so the saying of the sword proclaimeth. But if thou didst indeed draw it forth from the anvil, then it will be that thou shalt as easily be able for to thrust it back again into that place from whence thou did take it. Ooh. Getting a little bit particular, are we now? You've got to prove yourself. At this, a great trouble of spirit fell upon Sir Kay, and he cried out in a very loud voice, Who may do such a thing as that, and who could perform so great a miracle as to thrust a sword into solid iron? Whereunto Sir Ector made reply, Such a miracle is no greater than the miracle that thou hast performed in drawing it out from its embedment. For who ever heard that a man could draw forth a sword from a place, and yet would not thrust it back whence he drew it? Then Sir Kay wist not what to say to his father, and he greatly feared that he should not be able to perform that miracle. But nevertheless, he took what comfort to himself he was able, saying, If my young brother Arthur was able to perform this miracle, why should I not do a miracle of like sort? For assuredly I am not less worthy than he. Wherefore, if he drew the sword forth with such ease, it may be that I with equal ease shall be able to thrust it back in its place again. Accordingly, he took such comfort to himself in these thoughts as he was able. So he wrapped the sword in the cloak again, and when he had done so, he and Sir Ector went forth from the pavilion, and betook their way unto where was the marble stone and the anvil before the cathedral. And Arthur went with his father and his brother, and they forbade him not. And when they had come to that place where the sword had been, Sir Kay mounted upon the cube of marble stone, and beheld the face of the anvil. And lo, the face of the anvil was altogether smooth, and without a scratch or a scar of any sort. And Sir Kay said to himself, What is this my father would have me do? What man is there in life who could thrust a sword blade into a solid anvil of iron? But nonetheless, he could not withdraw from that impossible undertaking, but was constrained to essay that miracle, wherefore he set the point of the sword to the iron, and bore upon it with all his strength. But it was impossible for him to accomplish that thing, and though he endeavoured with all his might with the sword against the face of the anvil, yet did he not pierce the iron even to the breadth of a hair. So after he had thus essayed for a great while, he at last ceased what he did, and came down from where he stood, and he said to his father, Sire, no man in life may perform that miracle. Unto this Sir Ector made reply, How is it possible, then, that thou couldst have drawn out that sword as thou sayest, and yet cannot put it back again? Then young Arthur lifted up his voice and said, My father, have I thy leave to speak? And Sir Ector said, Speak, my son. And Arthur said, I would that I might essay to handle that sword. Whereunto Sir Ector replied, By what authority wouldst thou handle that sword? And Arthur said, Because it was I who drew that sword forth from the anvil for my brother. Wherefore, as thou sayest, to draw it forth is not more difficult than to thrust it back again. So I believe that I shall be able to set back into the iron whence I drew it. Then Sir Ector gazed upon young Arthur in such a strange manner that Arthur wist not why he looked at him in that wise. Wherefore he cried out, Sire, why dost thou gaze so strangely upon me? Hast thou anger against me? Whereunto Sir Ector made reply, In the sight of God, my son, I have no anger against thee. Then he said, If thou hast a desire to handle the sword, thou mayst assuredly make essay of that miracle. So Arthur took the sword from his brother Kay, and he leapt upon the marble stone. And he set the point of the sword upon the anvil, and bare very strongly upon it, and lo, the sword penetrated very smoothly into the centre of the anvil until it stood midway deep therein, and there it stood fast. And after he had performed that miracle, he drew the sword forth again very swiftly and easily, and then thrust it back again once more, as he had done before. But when Sir Ector beheld what Arthur did, he cried out in a voice of exceeding loudness, Lord, Lord, what is the miracle mine eyes behold? And when Arthur came down from the cube of marble stone, Sir Ector kneeled before him, and set his hands together, palm to palm. But when Arthur beheld what his father did, he cried out aloud, alike one in great measure of pain, and he said, my father, why dost thou kneel to me? To him Sir Ector made reply, I am not thy father, and now it is made manifest that thou art assuredly of very exalted race, and that thou blood of kings flows in thy veins, else thou couldst not have handled that sword as thou hast done. Then Arthur fell a-weeping beyond all measure, and he cried out as with a great agony of his spirit, Father, what is it thou sayest? I beseech thee to arise and not to kneel unto me. Sir Ector arose from his knees and stood before the face of Arthur, and he said, Arthur, why dost thou weep? And Arthur said, Because I am afeard. Now all this while Sir Kay had stood nearby, and he could neither move nor speak, but stood like one entranced, and he said to himself, What is this? Is my brother a king? Then Sir Ector spake, saying, Arthur, the time hath come for thee to know thyself, for the true circumstances of thy life have heretofore been altogether hidden from me. Now I do confess everything to thee in this wise, that 18 years ago there came to me a certain man very wise and high in favour with Uther Pendragon, and that man was the enchanter Merlin. And Merlin showed me the signet ring of Uther Pendragon, and he commanded me by virtue of that ring that I should be at a certain assigned place at a particular time which he nominated. And the place which he assigned was the postern gate of Uther Pendragon's castle, and the time which he named was midnight of that very day. And he bade me tell no man aught concerning these things, which he communicated to me, and so I kept his counsel as he desired me to do. So I went to that postern gate at midnight, as Merlin had commanded, And at that place there came unto me Merlin and another man, and the other man was Sir Ulfius, who was the chief knight of Uther Pendragon's household. And I tell thee that these two worthies stood nigher unto Uther Pendragon than any other man in all of the world. Now when these two came unto me, I perceived that Merlin bare in his arms a certain thing wrapped in a scarlet mantle of fine texture. And he opened the folds of the mantle, and lo, I beheld the child, not long born, and wrapped in swaddling clothes. And I saw the child in the light of a lanthorn, which Sir Ulfius bare. And I perceived that he was very fair of face, and large of bone, and thou wert that child. Then Merlin commanded me in this wise, that I was to take that child, and that I should rear him as mine own. And he said that that child was to be called by the name of Arthur. And he said that no one in all the world was to know otherwise that that child was mine own. And I told Merlin that I would do as he would have me, whereupon I took the child and bare it away with me. And I proclaimed that the child was mine own, and all over the world believed my words, wherefore no one ever knew otherwise than that thou wert mine own son. And that lady, who was my wife, when she died, she took that secret with her unto paradise. And since then, unto now, no one in all the world knew aught of this matter but I and those two aforementioned worthies. Nor have I until now ever known aught of who thy father was, but now I do suspect who he was, and that thou hast in thy veins very high and kingly blood. And I do have in mind that perhaps thy father was Uther Pendragon himself. For who but the son of Uther Pendragon could have drawn forth that sword from out of the anvil, as thou hast done? Then, when King Arthur heard that saying of his father's, he cried out in very loud and vehement voice, Woe! 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 saying that word 3 times. And Sir Ector said, Arthur, why art thou woeful? And Arthur said, Because I have lost my father, for I would rather have my father than be a king. Now as these things passed, there came unto that place 2 men, very tall, and of a wonderfully noble and haughty appearance. And when these 2 men had come nigh to where they were, Arthur and Sir Ector and Sir Kay perceived that one of them was the enchanter Merlin, and that the other was Sir Ulfius, for these 2 men were very famous and well known unto all the world. And when these 2 had come were the 3, Merlin spake, saying, What cheer? And Sir Ector made answer, Here is cheer of a very wonderful sort. For behold, Merlin, this is the child that thou didst bring unto me 18 years ago, and lo, thou seest he hath grown unto manhood. Then Merlin said, Sir Ector, I know very well who is this youth, for I have kept diligent watch over him all this time, and I know that in him lieth the hope of Britain. Moreover, I tell thee that even today, within the surface of an enchantment looking-glass, I have beheld all that he hath done since the morning. And I know how he drew forth the sword from the anvil, and how he thrust it back again, and I know how he drew it forth, and thrust it back a second time, and I know all that thou hast been saying unto him this while. Wherefore I also do now avouch that thou hast told him the very truth. And lo, the spirit of prophecy is upon me, and I do foresee into the future that thou, Arthur, shall become the greatest and most famous king that ever lived in Britain. And I do foresee that many knights of extraordinary intelligence shall gather about thee, and that men shall tell of their marvelous deeds as long as this land shall continue. And I do foresee that through these knights thy reign shall be full of splendor and glory. And I do foresee that through these knights thy reign shall be full of splendor and glory. And I do foresee that the most marvelous adventure of the Holy Grail shall be achieved by 3 of the knights of thy court, and that to thy lasting renown, who shall be the king under whose reign the Holy Cup shall be received. All these things I foresee, and lo, the time is now at hand, when the glory of thy house shall again be made manifest unto the world, and all the people of the land shall rejoice in thee and thy kinghood. Wherefore, Sir Ector, for these 3 days to come, I do charge it upon thee that thou do guard this young man as the apple of thine eye, for in him doth lie the hope and salvation of all this realm. Then Sir Ector lifted up his voice and cried unto Arthur, A boon! A boon! And Arthur said, Alas, how is this? Dost thou, my father, ask a boon of me, who may have all in the world that is mine to give? Ask what thou wilt, and it is thine. Then Sir Ector said, I do beseech this of thee, that when thou art king, thy brother Kay may be seneschal of all this realm. And Arthur said, It shall be as thou dost ask. And he said, As for thee, it shall be still better with thee, for thou shalt be my father unto the end. Whereupon, so saying, he took Sir Ector's head into his hands, and he kissed Sir Ector upon the forehead and upon the cheeks, and so sealed his plighted word. But all this while Sir Kay had stood, like unto one struck by thunder, and he wist not whether to be uplifted unto the skies, or to be cast down into the depths, that his young brother should thus have been passed by him, and exalted unto that extraordinary altitude of fortune. Wherefore he stood like one bereft of life and motion. And let it here be said that Arthur fulfilled all that he had thus promised to his father, for in times after he made Sir Kay his seneschal, and Sir Ector was to him a father until the day of his death, which same befell 5 years from that time. Thus I have told you how the royalty of Arthur was first discovered, and now, if you will listen, ye shall hear how it was confirmed before all the world. Hey, you want to buy something? You can check the description for my books and audiobooks. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content.